I transferred another $12,000 on a Tuesday morning in March, the same way I had been doing for the past 2 years. My phone buzzed with the confirmation, and I felt that familiar mixture of pride and exhaustion settle into my chest. This was what daughters did, I told myself. They helped their parents. They stepped up when family needed them. My father had started his commercial printing business 3 years ago, after decades of working in middle management positions that never quite satisfied him. At 62, he had finally decided to pursue his dream of owning something, building something that bore his name. Kingston Printing Solutions had been his vision, his late career gamble, and I had been there from the beginning, cheering him on. The first loan payment I made had been voluntary, enthusiastic even. Dad had called me on a Sunday evening, his voice tight with stress. The initial investors had pulled out at the last minute, and the bank required a larger down payment than he had anticipated. Could I help? Just this once, just to get things started. He would pay me back as soon as the contracts started coming in. I had written that check for $15,000 without hesitation. I was a senior financial analyst at Weatherby Consulting in Boston, and my salary afforded me some flexibility. More importantly, I wanted to support him. My mother had passed away 4 years earlier, and I had watched my father drift through those months like a ghost. The printing business had brought light back into his eyes. How could I refuse? But 1 payment became 2. 2 became 6. 6 became a steady stream of transfers, each one accompanied by promises that next quarter would be different, that the big contracts were just around the corner, that he just needed a little more time to establish the client base. I sat in my apartment that Tuesday morning, coffee growing cold beside my laptop, and reviewed my own finances. My savings account had been gutted. The retirement fund I had been carefully building since my 20s had been raided twice. I had canceled a vacation to Portugal, postponed dental work, and started buying generic brands at the grocery store. My friends wondered why I never wanted to go out anymore. I made excuses about being busy with work. The truth was simpler and more complicated. I was funding my father's dream, and it was drowning me. My phone rang. Dad's photo appeared on the screen, the picture I had taken of him 2 Christmases ago, before the business, when his face had still carried the softness of retirement dreams, rather than the sharp angles of stress. "Alicia, sweetheart," he said, when I answered. His voice carried that particular tone I had come to recognize, the one that preceded a request. "Did the transfer go through? The bank needs confirmation by noon." "It went through this morning," I said. 12,000, just like you asked. You're a lifesaver. I mean it. This contract with the hospital system is going to change everything. Once we get their business, we'll be set. I'll finally be able to start paying you back." I had heard variations of this speech 17 times. I had stopped counting after that. But the pattern remained the same. Big contract coming. Things turning around. Payment just around the corner. "That's great, Dad," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "I'm really happy for you. How are you doing? Work going well?" "Busy," I said, which was true. I had taken on extra projects, additional clients, anything to generate more income. My boss had commented twice on my dedication. I had not told him it was desperation rather than ambition. But good. Everything's good. We talked for a few more minutes, surface conversation that skimmed across the reality of our situation like a stone across water. When we hung up, I sat staring at my bank balance, watching the number that represented 2 years of sacrifice, of canceled plans and delayed dreams. My Aunt Patricia called that evening. Dad's younger sister had always been the family truth teller, the one who said what everyone else was thinking but too polite to voice. We had grown closer since Mom died, bonding over our shared grief and our shared concern for Dad. "How much this time?" she asked without preamble. 12,000, I said. She sighed, a sound that carried decades of sibling frustration. "Alicia, honey, you need to stop. He needs help, Aunt Patricia. The business is still getting established. The business is a black hole, she said bluntly, and you're throwing your future into it. We had had this conversation before. It always ended the same way, with me defending Dad and Patricia warning me that I was being used. I loved her for caring, but she did not understand the obligation I felt, the debt I owed to the man who had raised me, who had worked overtime to pay for my college, who had sat beside Mom's hospital bed holding her hand until the very end. He's my father, I said quietly. And you're his daughter, not his personal bank, Patricia replied. But I know I'm not going to change your mind. Just promise me you'll be careful. Please, I promised, though I was not entirely sure what being careful meant anymore. April arrived with the kind of spring weather that makes Boston beautiful, cherry blossoms blooming along Commonwealth Avenue, and people shedding their winter coats like old skin. I walked to work through the public garden, watching tourists take photos by the swan boats, and tried to remember the last time I had felt that carefree. The pattern continued. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, Dad called with another payment due. The amounts varied, sometimes $8,000, sometimes $15,000, depending on which loan was coming due and which supplier needed to be paid. I had become intimately familiar with the machinery of his business, could recite his accounts payable schedule from memory. My colleague Jessica noticed me declining another lunch invitation and cornered me by the coffee machine. We had started at Weatherby the same week 5 years ago, and she knew me well enough to recognize when something was wrong. You're living on vending machine snacks and you look exhausted, she said. What's going on? I considered telling her. The words were right there, ready to spill out. My father is bleeding me dry. I have given him over $100,000. I cannot remember the last time I bought myself something that was not a necessity. Instead, I said, just family stuff, nothing serious. She studied me for a moment, then squeezed my shoulder. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I appreciated the offer, but talking would not change anything. Talking would not make Dad's business suddenly profitable. Talking would not refill my savings account or undo 2 years of financial sacrifice. That night, I did something I had been avoiding. I calculated the total. Every transfer, every check, every payment made on his behalf. The number that appeared on my spreadsheet made my hands shake. $127,000. I had given my father $127,000 over 2 years. The number was staggering. That was a down payment on a house. That was a graduate degree. That was financial security I had systematically dismantled, month after month, payment after payment. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Can you talk? I called him back, my throat tight. Sweetheart, I have amazing news, he said. And for the first time in months, he sounded genuinely excited. We just landed the contract with Riverside Hospital. It's huge. 5-year deal. Guaranteed minimum orders. This is exactly what we have been waiting for. Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. That's wonderful, Dad. I'm so proud of you. I could not have done this without you, he said, and his voice cracked slightly. I mean that, Alicia. Your support has kept me afloat. Once this contract kicks in, I'll start paying you back. I promise. Every penny. We talked for half an hour, longer than we had in months. He told me about the contract terms, about his plans for expansion, about finally being able to breathe. I felt the weight I had been carrying begin to lift. It had been worth it. The sacrifice, the stress, the depleted savings. It had all been worth it because Dad was going to make it. I slept better that night than I had in 2 years. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls from Aunt Patricia. My heart immediately jumped into panic mode. Had something happened to Dad? Was he hurt? I called her back with shaking hands. Alicia, she said, and her voice was strange, careful in a way that frightened me. I need you to come over. Right now. Please. What's wrong? Is Dad okay? He's fine, physically. Just come over. I need to show you something. I drove to her house in Cambridge, my mind spinning through possibilities. Patricia met me at the door, her face drawn and older than I had ever seen it. Before I show you this, I want you to know that I debated for 3 days about whether to tell you, she said. But you're my niece, and I love you, and you deserve to know the truth. She led me to her living room, where her laptop sat open on the coffee table. She pressed play on a video file, then stepped back. The video showed Dad in what looked like his office at the printing facility. The angle suggested a security camera, or maybe a phone propped on a desk. He was talking to someone off camera, someone whose voice I recognized as belonging to Travis, his business partner. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, Dad was saying. He looked tired, frustrated. Alicia's good for another few months at least. She's always been easy to manage. My stomach dropped. How much has she given you total? Travis asked. Around $127,000 at this point, Dad said casually, like he was discussing the weather. The beauty is, she thinks it's all going to the business. She has no idea I've been using half of it to cover my personal expenses. I stopped breathing. Travis laughed. Must be nice having a daughter who's also a personal ATM. She's always been desperate for approval, Dad said, and his voice carried a dismissive tone I had never heard before. Makes her easy to manipulate. I just have to act stressed and talk about Mom, and she opens her wallet. The words hit me like physical blows. I sat frozen, watching my father, the man I had sacrificed everything for, casually discuss using me. What about that hospital contract? Travis asked. Dad waved his hand dismissively. That's real, actually. But I've been telling her we're barely surviving for so long. She'll believe anything. I can probably get another $50,000 out of her before she starts asking difficult questions. Maybe more if I play it right. You're a cold son of a bitch, Travis said, but he was laughing. I'm practical, Dad replied. She makes good money, and she's too guilty about her mother to ever say no. Why shouldn't I take advantage of that? It's not like she has a family of her own to spend it on. She's 35 and single. At least this way her money is going to something useful. My hands had gone numb. I was staring at the screen, but I could barely process what I was seeing. This could not be my father. This could not be the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had walked me down the aisle at my cousin's wedding when I was a bridesmaid, who had held me when Mom died, and promised we would get through it together. What about Patricia? Travis asked. She's been suspicious. My sister can go to hell, Dad said flatly. She's always been jealous that Mom liked me better. Let her suspect whatever she wants. As long as Alicia keeps transferring money, I don't care what Patricia thinks. The video ended. The silence in Patricia's living room felt like a living thing, pressing down on me from all sides. I'm so sorry, Patricia said softly. A friend of mine does maintenance work at the printing facility. He found that footage on the security system and thought I should know. He knows I've been worried about you. I could not speak. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile the father I thought I knew with the man in that video. Every conversation we had had for the past 2 years suddenly replayed in my head, but now with the knowledge that he had been manipulating me, using my love and my guilt as weapons. Half of it went to personal expenses, I finally said, my voice hollow. He's been lying about everything. Patricia nodded. I had my suspicions, but I never imagined it was this calculated. I thought about the $12,000 I had transferred just yesterday. Money he did not need. Money he had extracted from me through performance and lies. I thought about my empty savings account, my gutted retirement fund, the life I had put on hold because I believed I was helping my father survive. He called me a failure, I said quietly. The word was the one that hurt most, the one that kept echoing in my head. He said I'm desperate for approval, that I'm too guilty about Mom to say no. None of that is true, Patricia said fiercely. She sat beside me, taking my cold hands in her warm ones. You're not a failure. You're generous and loyal to a fault. He's the failure, Alicia. He's the one who betrayed your trust. I sat there for a long time, letting the truth settle into my bones. My father did not love me, or if he did, it was a conditional love, one that valued me only for what I could provide. I was not his daughter in that video. I was a resource to be exploited, a mark to be conned. Something shifted inside me. The grief and shock began to harden into something else, something colder and more focused. When is his next loan payment due? I asked. Patricia looked at me carefully. According to what I know about his borrowing schedule, he has a major payment coming up in 2 weeks. $30,000 to the primary lender. If he misses that payment, the bank can call the entire loan. I nodded slowly. An idea was forming, terrible and necessary. Can you send me that video? I asked. What are you going to do? I met her eyes. I'm going to stop being easy to manage. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something I had never done before. I ignored my father's calls. When he texted asking about the next payment, I responded with brief messages. Busy with work. We'll get back to you soon. Talk later. Each ignored call felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Each delayed response was a small act of rebellion against 2 years of manipulation. I spent those weeks carefully reviewing every transaction I had made, building a comprehensive record of exactly how much I had given him and when. I organized it all into a detailed spreadsheet, complete with bank statements and transfer confirmations. The evidence was damning and irrefutable. I also did something else. I consulted with a lawyer, a shark named Catherine who specialized in financial fraud. I showed her the video and my records. Her expression grew darker as she reviewed everything. This is elder abuse in reverse, she said. Financial exploitation of an adult child by a parent. It's less common than the other way around, but it's absolutely actionable. You could pursue criminal charges if you wanted. I don't want him in jail, I said. I want him to understand what he's done. I want consequences. Catherine smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Then let's talk about your options. The day before the loan payment was due, my phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. By the 5th call, I finally answered. Alicia, thank God, he said, and his voice was pure panic. I've been trying to reach you for days. The payment is due tomorrow. $30,000. I need you to transfer it today so it clears in time. I've been busy, I said calmly. I understand, but this is urgent. If I miss this payment, the bank can call the entire loan. Everything I've built will be gone. Please, sweetheart. I need you. The words that had once moved me now sounded hollow, pathetic even. I'll think about it, I said. Think about it? His panic was escalating into something sharper. Alicia, there's no time to think. I need that money now. I said I'll think about it, I repeated, and hung up. He called back immediately. I did not answer. He called 17 more times that evening. Each ignored call felt like justice. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face in that video, heard his casual cruelty, his calculated dismissal of my worth. The man who had once been my hero had revealed himself to be something much smaller, much meaner. The grief of that revelation sat heavy in my chest, but beneath it burned something hotter, something that kept me awake and planning. My phone continued its relentless buzzing throughout the night. Dad called at 11, at 1 in the morning, at 3:15. Each time I watched his name light up my screen and did nothing. The power of refusal felt strange and intoxicating after 2 years of immediate compliance. At 6 a.m., he started texting. The messages came rapid fire, each one more desperate than the last. "Alicia, please pick up. This isn't funny. I need to talk to you. The payment is due at noon. Please. You're going to destroy everything I've worked for. How can you do this to your father?" That last one made me laugh, a bitter sound in the quiet of my apartment. How could I do this to him? The audacity of the question, the sheer nerve of it, was almost impressive. At 8 a.m., Aunt Patricia called. "He's been calling me," she said, "asking if I know where you are, if something's wrong with you. He sounds frantic." "Good," I said. "What's your plan?" I told her. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's ruthless," she finally said. "I learned from the best." At 10 a.m., I got ready. I dressed in my best suit, the charcoal gray one I reserved for important client meetings. I did my makeup carefully, armor and war paint combined. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 weeks ago, I had been someone who could be manipulated with guilt and false promises. Today, I was someone else entirely. My phone rang again. "Dad." This time I answered. "Alicia, thank God." "Meet me at your office," I said, cutting him off. 11 a.m., we need to talk. "Can't you just transfer the money? We can talk later, but the payment—" 11 a.m., I repeated. "Your office." "Don't be late." I hung up before he could respond. The drive to Kingston Printing Solutions took 40 minutes. The facility was in an industrial park south of Boston, a nondescript building that housed Dad's supposed dream. I had been here only twice before. He had always preferred to keep his work and personal life separate. Now I understood why. Easier to maintain the fiction when I could not see the reality. I parked and sat in my car for a moment, steadying my breathing. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger, from grief, from the terrible clarity of knowing exactly what I was about to do. Dad's truck was already in the parking lot. I could see him through the glass front door, pacing in the small lobby area. He looked terrible, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. Good. When I walked in, he rushed toward me. "Alicia, sweetheart, thank God you're here. Look, I don't know what's going on, but we can talk about it after you make the transfer. The bank needs—" "Sit down," I said. Something in my voice stopped him. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he realized something had shifted. "Alicia, what's wrong? Sit down." He sat. I remained standing, positioning myself between him and the door. I pulled out my phone and opened the video file Patricia had sent me, the one of him and Travis discussing me like I was a particularly gullible ATM. "I want you to watch something," I said, and pressed play. I watched his face as the video played, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his eyes widen, watched the panic set in. When his recorded voice said, "She's always been easy to manage," his present-day self flinched like he had been struck. The video ended. The silence that followed was absolute. "Where did you get that?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Does it matter?" "Alicia, you have to understand. That conversation, it's not what it sounds like." "Really?" I leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Because it sounds like you've been systematically manipulating me for 2 years. It sounds like you've been stealing from me while pretending to need help. It sounds like half of the $127,000 I've given you went to personal expenses, not business costs." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I can explain." "Don't." The word came out sharp, cutting. "Don't insult me further by lying to my face. I've spent the past 2 weeks documenting everything. Every transfer, every payment, every conversation where you manipulated me into giving you money. I have bank statements, text messages, emails. I have evidence of everything. Dad's face had gone from white to gray. What do you want? What do I want? I repeated softly. I want the past 2 years back. I want my savings restored. I want the retirement fund I emptied for you. I want the trust I had in my father. But I can't have any of those things, can I? I'll pay you back, he said quickly. The hospital contract is real, I swear. Once that kicks in, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I don't believe anything you say anymore. He slumped in his chair, and for a moment, he looked old and defeated. I felt nothing. The man in front of me was a stranger wearing my father's face. The loan payment is due in 45 minutes, I said. $30,000. You called me here expecting me to save you like I always do. But that's not going to happen. Alicia, please. Now his voice broke, actual tears forming in his eyes. If I miss this payment, the bank calls the loan. I lose everything. The business, the equipment, everything I've built. Everything you built with my money, I corrected. Money you obtained through lies and emotional manipulation. I'm your father. No, I said quietly. A father protects his child. A father would rather starve than drain his daughter's life savings. You're not my father. You're a con man who happens to share my DNA. He stared at me, and I saw the moment he realized I meant it, that I was actually going to let him fail. What do you want from me? He asked again, desperate now. I want you to understand what you've done, I said. I want you to feel what I felt when I watched that video. I want you to know what it's like to lose everything because someone you trusted betrayed you. So that's it? You're just going to stand there and watch me lose my business? Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Dad lurched to his feet, his face flushing red. The defeated old man vanished, replaced by something uglier. You're doing this to punish me? You're that petty? I'm that done, I corrected. There's a difference. I gave you everything, he said, his voice rising. I worked myself to the bone to give you a good life, to pay for your education. You owe me. The words hung in the air between us, and I felt something inside me crystallize into diamond-hard certainty. I owe you? I repeated softly. Let me tell you what I've given you, Dad. $127,000. 2 years of my life. My savings, my retirement fund, my peace of mind. I canceled vacations, postponed medical care, bought generic groceries, and worked myself sick taking on extra projects to generate more money for you. All while you sat in this office telling your business partner that I was easy to manipulate, that I was too desperate for approval to ever say no. That's not... And you know what the worst part is? I continued, my voice steady despite the rage burning through me. I would have done it anyway. If you had been honest with me, if you had told me you were struggling with personal expenses too, I would have helped. Maybe not with this much money, maybe not for this long. But I would have been there for you because that's what families do. His face twisted. Then why won't you help me now? Because you lied, I said simply. Because you manipulated me. Because you called me a failure and a burden while I was literally funding your lifestyle. Because you planned to take another $50,000 from me, maybe more, and you saw nothing wrong with that. I never called you a failure, he protested weakly. I pulled out my phone again and found the exact timestamp. Want me to play it again? The part where you say I'm desperate for approval and too guilty about Mom to ever say no? Or maybe the part where Travis calls me your personal ATM and you laugh? He flinched again. Good. I wanted him to flinch. I wanted him to feel every word like the blade it was. You used Mom's death as a weapon, I said, and my voice broke on those words despite my best efforts. You knew how much I was still grieving, how much guilt I carried about not being there more in her final months, and you weaponized that grief to steal from me. I didn't steal. You obtained money through false pretenses, I said. That's fraud, Dad. I spoke with a lawyer, Catherine Green. She specializes in financial exploitation cases. She said I have grounds for criminal charges. The color drained from his face again. You wouldn't. I haven't decided yet, I said honestly. Part of me wants to see you prosecuted. Part of me wants to watch you explain to a judge how you systematically manipulated your daughter out of over $100,000. But another part of me just wants to be done with you entirely. Alicia, please. Here's what's going to happen, I said, cutting him off. You're going to miss that payment today. The bank is going to call your loan. You're going to lose this business, and I'm not going to save you. You can't do this, he said, but the words lacked conviction. He knew I could. He was watching me do it. I also contacted Travis, I said. Sent him a copy of the video and a message explaining that I would be pursuing legal action against anyone who assisted in defrauding me. He called me back within an hour, very eager to cooperate. Apparently, he had no idea you were lying to me about where the money was going. He thought I was a willing investor, not a mark. Dad's hands were shaking now. Travis sent me copies of all the business financial records. I interrupted. Detailed breakdowns of every expense, every payment, every transaction. Would you like to know what I found? He said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. The business is actually doing okay, I said. Not great, but stable. Profitable even, once the hospital contract kicked in last month. You didn't need most of the money I gave you. The business needed maybe 30% of it. The rest? Personal expenses, your truck payment, that fishing boat you bought last summer. The vacation to Florida, all funded by me while you cried poverty. I was going to pay you back, he said weakly. No, you weren't, I said. You were going to keep taking until I had nothing left to give, and then you would have blamed me for not helping more. My phone buzzed. An alarm I had set, 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes until the payment deadline. Time's almost up, I said. You should probably call the bank, tell them you can't make the payment. Or don't. Either way, I'm leaving. I turned toward the door. Wait! His voice cracked with desperation. What if I sign something? What if I agree to pay you back with interest? We can work this out, Alicia. Please. I'm begging you. I paused, my hand on the door handle. For a moment, just a brief flicker, I felt the old pull. The instinct to help, to fix, to save him from the consequences of his actions. 2 years of conditioning did not vanish in 2 weeks. But then I remembered his voice on that video. Easy to manage. Personal ATM. Failure. No, I said without turning around. I'm done being easy to manage. I'm your father, he shouted. That made me turn back. You stopped being my father the moment you decided I was something to use instead of someone to love. Goodbye, Dad. I walked out. Behind me, I heard him calling my name, heard the desperation in his voice, heard what might have been the sound of him crying. I kept walking. My phone rang before I even reached my car. Patricia. I answered. Did you do it? She asked. I did it. How do you feel? I stood in the parking lot, spring sunshine warm on my face, and took inventory of my emotions. Grief, yes. Anger, absolutely. But underneath it all, something else. Something that felt almost like relief. Free, I said. I feel free. I drove back to my apartment in a daze, the adrenaline slowly draining from my system and leaving me shaky and exhausted. My phone continued to ring, Dad's name lighting up the screen over and over. I put the phone on silent and focused on the road. When I got home, I found Patricia sitting on my front steps. She stood when she saw me, her face creased with concern. "I thought you might need company," she said simply. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and unlocked the door. We went inside, and I collapsed onto my couch. The weight of what I had just done was beginning to settle on me, heavy and complex. "Tell me everything," Patricia said, settling into the chair across from me. So I did. I told her about the video playing on Dad's face, about his attempts to lie and manipulate even when confronted with evidence. I told her about Travis's cooperation, about the financial records that proved Dad's deception, about walking out while he begged. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother would be proud of you," she finally said. The words hit me harder than I expected. Tears burned behind my eyes, the first I had allowed myself since watching that video 2 weeks ago. "Would she?" I asked. "I just destroyed Dad's business." I walked away while he was crying. "He destroyed his own business," Patricia corrected firmly. "And more importantly, he destroyed your trust, your financial security, and your sense of family. What you did today wasn't revenge, Alicia. It was self-preservation." My phone buzzed. Not Dad this time, but an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Miss Alicia?" The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Robert calling from First National Bank. I'm the loan officer handling your father's account." My stomach clenched. "Yes?" "I wanted to inform you that the payment deadline has passed without receipt of funds. Per the terms of the loan agreement, we are calling the full balance due immediately. We will begin seizure proceedings for the collateral within 30 days. "I understand," I said. "Your father indicated that you might be willing to make the payment on his behalf," Robert continued. "If you're still interested in preserving the business." "I'm not," I said firmly. "I won't be making any payments now or in the future." There was a pause. "I see. May I ask what changed? Our records show you've been making regular payments on his behalf for quite some time." "What changed," I said slowly, "is that I discovered the payments were based on lies. I won't be enabling that anymore." "Understood," Robert said. "I appreciate your candor. For what it's worth, this happens more often than you might think. Family members supporting businesses that turn out to be less legitimate than represented." After he hung up, I sat holding the phone, processing what I had just done. It was real now. Irrevocable. Dad's business would be seized. The dream he had claimed to be building would evaporate. "No regrets?" Patricia asked softly. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Not yet," I said honestly. "Ask me again in a month." The rest of that day passed in a blur. I ordered takeout, Thai food that I ate without tasting. Patricia stayed with me, her presence a quiet comfort. We did not talk much, but her being there was enough. That evening my doorbell rang. Patricia and I looked at each other. "Want me to get it?" she asked. I shook my head and went to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Dad standing on my front step. He looked terrible, worse than he had this morning. His eyes were red and swollen, his face haggard. I opened the door but did not invite him in. "I came to apologize," he said immediately. "Alicia, I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. I was using you, manipulating you, and it was wrong. Unforgivably wrong." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Okay." "Okay?" He looked confused. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Dad? That I forgive you? That we can work this out?" "I want you to give me a chance to make this right," he said desperately. "I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. But I'm still your father. That has to count for something." It did count for something, I said. It counted for $127,000 in 2 years of my life. But you used it all up. Please, he said. And now he was crying openly. I have nothing left. The business is gone. I'll lose the house next. I'll lose everything. The old me would have crumbled at his tears. The old me would have found a way to help, to fix, to save him one more time. The new me recognized a performance when I saw one. You should have thought about that before you decided I was easy to manipulate, I said quietly. You made your choices, Dad. Now you get to live with the consequences. I'll pay you back, he said. Every penny, I swear. Just help me save the business and I'll... No. The word was final. Absolute. I don't believe you, and even if I did, I wouldn't help you. You don't get to steal from me and then demand I save you from the fallout. He stared at me, and I saw the moment the performance dropped. His face hardened, the tears stopping as quickly as they had started. You're really going to do this? He asked, and now his voice carried an edge. You're going to stand there and watch me lose everything? Yes, I said simply. After everything I've done for you? You mean after everything I've done for you? I corrected. You're confused about the direction of the debt. His face flushed red. You're a cold bitch, you know that? I learned from the best, I said, echoing the words I had told Patricia earlier. Goodbye, Dad. I closed the door in his face, locked it, stood there with my back against it, listening to him yell from the other side. He shouted for maybe 5 minutes, words I had never heard him say before, names I would not have believed he knew. Patricia appeared beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Eventually, the shouting stopped. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the sound of his truck starting, the fade of his engine as he drove away. Are you okay? Patricia asked. I thought about that question. Was I okay? My father had revealed himself to be a fraud and a thief. I had just destroyed his business and possibly his life. He had stood on my doorstep and called me things I would never unhear. But I had also stopped the bleeding. I had reclaimed my power. I had chosen myself over his manipulation. I will be, I said. Eventually. The next morning, I woke early and did something I had not done in 2 years. I looked at my bank account without dread. The balance was pathetic, yes, but it was mine. No pending transfers, no obligations. No more watching my financial security drain away month after month. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching the city wake up. My phone had 43 messages, all from Dad. I deleted them without reading. Whatever he had to say, I did not need to hear it. Catherine, my lawyer, called at 9 a.m. sharp. I heard the bank called the loan, she said. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, I said honestly. Good. Now, let's talk about recovery options. You have several paths available. We can pursue a civil suit for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Given the video evidence and the financial records Travis provided, I'm confident we can recover at least a portion of what you're owed. How much of a portion? Realistically, maybe 30 to 40% after legal fees and the time it takes to liquidate his assets. He's judgment-proof for the most part. Once the bank seizes the business equipment, there won't be much left. But his house has some equity, and we can garnish any future income. I thought about that. Spending years in court, fighting over scraps, keeping Dad in my life in the worst possible way. What if I just walk away? I asked. Catherine was quiet for a moment. You'd be leaving a significant amount of money on the table. But I'd be free of him completely. That's also true, she said. Though I would recommend at least filing a police report. Create a paper trail in case he tries this with someone else. That I could do. That afternoon, I went to the police station and filed a formal complaint. The detective who took my statement was sympathetic but realistic. Financial exploitation cases within families are difficult to prosecute, he told me. Unless he forged your signature or physically coerced you, the transfers were technically voluntary. But having it on record protects you and potentially warns others. I signed the statement, provided copies of everything, the video, the financial records, the text messages. If Dad ever tried to claim I owed him something, if he ever tried to manipulate another family member, there would be evidence of what he had done. Word spread through the family quickly. Cousins I had not spoken to in years called to ask if it was true. Distant relatives weighed in with opinions I had not requested. Some supported me. Others thought I was being cruel, that family should forgive family, that Dad had made mistakes but did not deserve to lose everything. I stopped answering most of the calls. The only opinions that mattered were my own and Patricia's. 2 weeks after the loan was called, I got a call from Travis. "I wanted you to know the bank is auctioning the equipment next month," he said, and I wanted to apologize. I had no idea he was lying to you about where the money was going. If I'd known... "You would have done what?" I asked, not unkindly. "Told me? Stopped him?" "I don't know," Travis admitted, but I wouldn't have laughed. That video, I'm ashamed of how I sounded in it. "You weren't the one stealing from your daughter," I said. "You were just a bystander to it." "That doesn't make it better." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But at least you told the truth when it mattered. That's more than he did." Travis was quiet for a moment. "He's telling people you ruined him out of spite, that you were jealous of his success." I laughed, a sound without humor. "Of course he is. Taking responsibility would require integrity he doesn't have. For what it's worth, nobody who knows the real story believes him. I've been showing people the financial records. What he did to you was unconscionable." After we hung up, I sat with that information. Dad was rewriting the narrative, making himself the victim. It should have surprised me, but it did not. It was exactly what I expected from a man who could steal from his daughter and feel entitled to do it. The following week, I took a personal day from work and did something radical. I spent money on myself. Not much, just enough to remember what it felt like to want something and get it without guilt. I bought a new dress, had a long lunch at a restaurant I had been wanting to try, got my hair done. Small things, but they felt revolutionary. Jessica from work noticed the haircut the next day. "You look different," she said. "Good different. What changed?" "Everything," I said, and smiled. "Absolutely everything." I started sleeping better. The constant anxiety that had lived in my chest for 2 years was finally easing. My finances were damaged but not destroyed, and I was young enough to rebuild. I increased my retirement contributions, started a new savings account, made a budget that included things like vacations and new shoes. 1 month after the confrontation, the bank auction happened. I did not attend, but Patricia did. She called me afterward. "The equipment sold for less than expected," she said. "After the bank took their share, there was maybe $8,000 left. That's being split between the remaining creditors." "Did you see Dad?" "Briefly. He looked broken, Alicia. Genuinely broken." I waited for the satisfaction, the vindication. It did not come. Instead, I just felt tired and sad. "Good," I said anyway, because it needed to be said. "His house is going into foreclosure next month," Patricia continued. "He's moving into a small apartment in Quincy. He asked about you." "What did you tell him?" "That you're doing well and don't want contact." "Thank you." 2 months after everything imploded, I got a letter. Not from Dad, but from his lawyer. It was a formal demand for repayment of a supposed loan he claimed to have given me for college 20 years ago. $25,000, with interest. I called Catherine immediately. "This is retaliation," she said, after I read her the letter. "And it's also bullshit. Do you have any documentation of this supposed loan?" No, because it never existed. He paid for my college, but it was never a loan. It was just what parents do. Exactly. Don't respond directly. Let me handle this. Catherine sent a response that was professional and devastating. She included copies of the police report, the video, the financial records, and a detailed accounting of the $127,000 I had given Dad. The letter concluded with a simple statement. Any further harassment would result in a restraining order and criminal fraud charges. We never heard from his lawyer again. Spring turned to summer. Boston bloomed into humid heat, and I found myself healing in ways I had not anticipated. The constant financial stress was gone. The obligation, the guilt, the sense that I could never do enough. All of it had lifted. I started therapy. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Susan, helped me understand that what I had experienced was a form of abuse. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, exploitation of grief. She gave me language for what had happened, helped me see that my response had not been cruel but necessary. Boundaries aren't punishment, she told me in one session. They're self-protection. You didn't destroy your father's business out of revenge. You stopped enabling his exploitation of you. Sometimes it feels like revenge, I admitted. And that's okay too, she said. Anger is a healthy response to betrayal. The question is what you do with it. What I did with it was rebuild. Slowly, carefully, I reconstructed my financial life. I picked up a consulting side project that added $1,500 a month. I sold some possessions I no longer needed. I lived frugally, but not desperately. And for the first time in years, I could see a future that included stability. Jessica and I became closer friends. I finally told her the full story one evening over wine, and she listened without judgment. That's horrific, she said when I finished. But also, you're kind of a badass for walking away. I don't feel like a badass, I said. I feel like someone who survived something terrible. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Work became a refuge rather than a stress source. Without the constant anxiety about Dad's next payment, I found I actually enjoyed my job again. My boss noticed the change and promoted me to senior consultant with a salary increase that felt like a miracle. I put the first payment into my rebuilt retirement account and felt something close to peace. In August, Patricia invited me to her house for Sunday dinner. When I arrived, I found several other family members there. Cousins, an uncle, people I had been avoiding since the fallout. Ambush? I asked Patricia quietly. Intervention, she corrected. The good kind. My cousin Daniel spoke first. We wanted you to know that we know what really happened. Dad finally told us the truth about what your father did. Travis sent us the video, another cousin added. And the financial records. Alicia, we had no idea he was doing that to you. We thought you were just being generous, Uncle James said gruffly. If we'd known he was manipulating you. It's not your fault, I said. It wasn't your responsibility to protect me. Maybe not, Daniel said. But we're family. We should have noticed something was wrong. It was the first time since the confrontation that I felt the family support I had needed all along. We talked for hours, and they asked what they could do to help. I told them the truth. Nothing. I needed to rebuild on my own terms, without obligation or debt. But the offer mattered. The support mattered. September came with cooler air and falling leaves. I was in my office when my cell phone rang with another unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Alicia? A woman's voice, young, uncertain. Yes. Who's this? My name is Bethany. This is really awkward. I'm your father's girlfriend. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, what? I know this is weird. I probably shouldn't be calling. But I found some papers in his apartment, and I need to know if something is true. What papers? Financial documents, records of transfers from you, and a video file that shows... She stopped, her voice thick with emotion. Did he really do that to you? Did he really steal over $100,000 from his own daughter? Yes, I said simply. He did. Bethany was crying now. He told me you were vindictive, that you ruined his business because you were jealous of his success. He made you sound like a monster. Of course he did, I said without heat. Taking responsibility isn't his strength. He's been asking me for money, Bethany said. Small amounts at first, just a few hundred here and there. But last week he asked for $10,000. Said he needed it to restart his business, that he had investors lined up but needed capital to get started. The audacity was almost impressive. Don't give him anything. I wasn't planning to. Not after seeing those documents. But I wanted to warn you. He talks about you sometimes. About how he's going to make you pay for what you did. I think he's planning something. My blood ran cold. Planning what? I don't know, but he's obsessed with proving you wrong, with getting revenge. I thought you should know. After we hung up, I immediately called Catherine. Document everything, she said. Save that message, record the details of the conversation. If he's threatening you, even indirectly, that's grounds for a restraining order. Should I be worried? Catherine was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Yes. People who feel victimized sometimes escalate. Just be aware of your surroundings, vary your routine, and don't hesitate to call the police if anything feels off. The peace I had been building suddenly felt fragile. October arrived with the kind of brilliant autumn weather that makes New England famous. The trees along Commonwealth Avenue exploded into red and gold, and the air carried that perfect crispness that promised winter. I tried to focus on the beauty, on my rebuilt life, but Bethany's warning haunted me. I varied my routine, took different routes to work, looked over my shoulder more than I wanted to. Dad did not appear, did not call, did not make any overt moves, but the threat of him hung over everything like a shadow. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon in mid-October, my office phone rang. The receptionist sounded worried. Alicia, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your father. He doesn't have an appointment, and he's being insistent. Should I call security? My heart rate spiked. No. Give me 5 minutes, then send him back. I used those 5 minutes to call Catherine and put her on standby, to text Patricia with an update, to steady my breathing. When Dad walked into my office, I was ready. He looked terrible, thin, haggard, his clothes hanging loose. The vibrant man from 2 years ago had been replaced by this diminished shadow. I felt nothing. Alicia, he said, and his voice was rough, unused. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't want a scene in the lobby. I said, You have 5 minutes. Talk. He sat down uninvited. I came to apologize. Really apologize, not the performance from before. What I did to you was unforgivable. I stole from you. I lied to you. I exploited your grief and your love. I destroyed our relationship, and I destroyed myself in the process. I waited. There had to be more. I've lost everything, he continued. The business, my house, my reputation. I'm living in a studio apartment and working as a night manager at a copy shop. Everything I built is gone. Good, I said flatly. He flinched. I deserve that. I deserve your anger. But I'm here to tell you that I understand now. I understand what I threw away. You were the best thing in my life, and I treated you like an ATM. Is there a point to this? I asked. I want to make amends, he said. I know I can't pay you back, not financially, at least not anytime soon. But I want to try to repair our relationship. I want to be your father again. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. He looked sincere. His eyes were clear, his voice steady. It was the best performance I had seen from him yet. No, I said. Alicia, please. You came here thinking what? That a good apology would fix 2 years of systematic theft? That saying you understand would make me forget what you did? I came here hoping for a chance, he said. Just a chance to prove I've changed. You haven't changed, I said. You've just experienced consequences. There's a difference. You're sorry you got caught, sorry you lost everything. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. Not really. That's not true. Your girlfriend called me, I said, and watched his face go pale. Bethany. She told me you've been asking her for money, that you claim to have investors lined up for a new business. Tell me, Dad, how is that different from what you did to me? He stood up abruptly. That's different. I wasn't lying to her. There really are investors. Get out, I said quietly. Alicia, get out of my office. Get out of my building. Get out of my life. If you contact me again, if you come here again, I will file a restraining order so fast you won't know what hit you. Do you understand? He stared at me, and I saw the mask slip. The apologetic broken man vanished, replaced by something harder, meaner. The real him, the one he had been trying to hide. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice cold. I'm still your father. You can't just erase me. Watch me, I said. He turned and walked out. I sat there, heart pounding, and called security anyway. I wanted it documented that he had been here, wanted a paper trail in case he tried something else. That evening, I filed for the restraining order. Catherine expedited the process, and within a week, Dad was legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. How do you feel? Patricia asked when I told her. Safe, I said. Finally, safe. The weeks that followed were quiet. Dad did not violate the restraining order, did not attempt contact. I heard through family gossip that he had been fired from the copy shop for stealing petty cash, that Bethany had left him after discovering he had been running the same con on 2 other women simultaneously, that he had moved again, to an even smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood. I felt nothing about any of it. No satisfaction, no grief, no anger. Just a distant sense of closure. In November, I did something radical. I went on a vacation. Just a long weekend in Vermont, hiking through the autumn forest and staying in a small bed and breakfast. I spent money without guilt, enjoyed myself without anxiety, and came back feeling renewed. Work continued to go well. I got another promotion in December, this one with a substantial raise. I put half of it into aggressive savings, determined to rebuild what I had lost. The other half I spent on things that made me happy. A new laptop, a painting for my apartment, dinner with friends who had stuck by me through everything. Christmas came. I spent it with Patricia and her family, surrounded by people who loved me without conditions, without expectations. No one mentioned Dad. No one suggested I should reach out, should forgive, should give him another chance. They simply loved me, and it was enough. On New Year's Eve, I stood on my apartment balcony watching fireworks over the harbor. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. I hope you're happy with what you've done. You destroyed me. I'll never forgive you for that. I stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked the number and deleted the text. Whatever Dad wanted, absolution, revenge, attention, he would not get it from me. The fireworks exploded overhead, brilliant and bright, and I thought about the woman I had been 2 years ago. The one who would have read that text and felt guilt, would have questioned her choices, would have maybe even called him back. She was gone. In her place stood someone harder, wiser, more protective of herself. Someone who knew that love without respect was worthless, that family was about more than shared DNA, that she deserved better than being someone's personal ATM. The new year stretched ahead, full of possibility. I had my health, my career, my true family in Patricia, and the cousins who had stood by me. I had a future I was building on my own terms, without obligation or manipulation. Dad spent the next year discovering that his actions had consequences that extended far beyond losing his business. The police report I had filed became part of a pattern when 2 other women came forward with similar stories of financial manipulation. While criminal charges were never filed due to the complexity of proving intent, the civil suits were successful. His credit was destroyed. His reputation in the business community was non-existent. He was forced to file for bankruptcy, and even that did not erase the judgments against him. The family that had once made excuses for him slowly withdrew their support as the full extent of his deception became clear. He had not just targeted me, he had borrowed money from cousins under false pretenses, had manipulated elderly relatives into co-signing loans he never intended to repay, had left a trail of financial destruction wherever he went. The man who had once been the center of family gatherings became someone no one wanted around. I heard he eventually left Massachusetts entirely, moving somewhere in the Midwest where no one knew his history. I did not care enough to find out where. As for me, I rebuilt everything he had taken, and then some. 3 years after that confrontation in his office, I had not only restored my savings and retirement accounts, I had exceeded where I would have been if I had never helped him at all. I bought a small house in Brookline, got a rescue dog named Cooper, and started dating someone who respected my boundaries and celebrated my strength. I never regretted walking away from my father's office that day, letting his business collapse, refusing to save him one more time. Some people called it revenge. I called it self-preservation. In the end, the distinction did not matter. What mattered was that I had chosen myself, had drawn the line I should have drawn 2 years earlier, and had built a life on the other side of that line that was wholly and completely my own. Looking back on that journey, on the woman who had been so easy to manipulate, and the one I had become, I understood something fundamental. Revenge is not always about destruction. Sometimes it is simply about refusing to be destroyed.